When I finished my PhD, a lot of people asked me, how did you do that? How did you do that in 3 years? How did you do that with three kids? Started with two and had a third during the second year of my program. How did you do that while transitioning out of a career and entering a new one? How did you do that as a busy working mother? And oftentimes in those conversations, I just sort of simplify the conversation by saying, you know what, I don't know how I did it. I'm just grateful that I did. And there were some unique circumstances in my life that enabled that to happen. But I basically close the conversation with, I don't know. Well, I do that just to make the conversation a little bit easier because sometimes it's hard to talk about how you do a major accomplishment in your life without making other people feel uncomfortable, without making it sound like you're bragging or you're on a high horse about your life and your success. And I'm at my core a humble person. I did not want to make people feel uncomfortable or to make people make comparisons between myself and them. But I began to think about really why I was able to do this and how exactly I was able to accomplish this in a short amount of time with the life circumstances that I have. And I started to really feel that it was important to be specific, be transparent, and share how it was I actually was able to accomplish this, particularly for other women who are considering getting a PhD, maybe in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, during a second career transition, during a busy time of life, perhaps with children or caring for elderly parents or relatives. So I have a real desire to make this a possible path for those who would like it to be and give some concrete words of support and encouragement and advice for those who may be struggling while they're trying to complete it. So I'll make this video sort of in different chunks, which I've sort of, this is very, I guess, maybe academic-y of me to do, but I'm going to start with the practical, then talk about the professional, the personal, and political. And so each of these components relates to how I was able to do this accomplishment with my current life circumstances. So the practical, I did choose a PhD program that would enable me to have the flexibility of working at the time. I was a three-quarter time pastor at the time in the Presbyterian Church. I was the primary breadwinner for my family, carried the benefits for my family. I was not interested in quitting my job and doing this exclusively. So I really needed something that would work well with that and dovetail with that, as well as being the parent of two young children at the time. My children were 3 and 5 when I started my PhD program. So I looked for a program that was a scholar practitioner program where it was really expected that the students would be in their current professions while they were pursuing a degree that related to their professional field or their trade. I also needed a low residency program, one that did not require a lot of in-person on-site study or interaction. So most of the program in this particular one through Antioch University was online. It was also at the end of the COVID pandemic, so that online feature actually extended a little bit further, which for me in my circumstances really benefited me. There were 3 in-person residencies per year, and I was able to do the program really only going to 2 at the end. In terms of the practicality of being a parent of 2 children at the time, I was also pregnant with my 3rd child during the second year, so I was able to actually postpone those in-person residencies because I was at the end of my pregnancy and couldn't travel, and then at the next one had an infant. So it actually sort of benefited me in my circumstances to be really needing to be at home, and I really couldn't travel to those. So that's the practical. The professional is that I actually made a really important and necessary shift in my career shortly after I began the program, in which my husband and I flip-flopped, where he became the primary breadwinner, and I ultimately left my vocation at that time as an ordained clergy. My research ultimately looked at that in terms of psychological safety of clergy women and the need to leave active ministry. And I was in a very toxic congregation during a really divisive time in our country and no longer felt safe in that role. So I left active ministry altogether, and I decided to pivot completely in the direction of being a full-time student while also building up a leadership coaching practice where I worked one-on-one with women leaders in different vocations who are needing to establish boundaries, make important transitions, make important pivots, and that's ultimately become my main work now. So making that transition while being in the program was actually very helpful because I was already in this regular schedule of working 3/4 time as a pastor. I transferred those working hours into the hours that I worked on my PhD, and I was fortunately in a situation where my partner was able to then be the primary breadwinner for our family. I did do a lot of sort of fundraising and scholarship applications to be able to pay for the program. Um, Probably, I would say half of the program I was able to pay for through scholarship funds and grants. The rest I took out federal funds, which I will be paying off over several years. Um, and I look at that as an investment in my career and something that my family, my partner, and I supported. The other part of transitioning professions during this program was something that was more of a personal nature, in the fact that I was overcoming a lot of trauma and grief, having been in a really toxic professional situation, one that affected me deeply personally, and my family life personally. And so the PhD program, in some ways, became this therapeutic outlet for me. And I think that's a really primary aspect of PhD work in the social sciences, is oftentimes the researcher's life themselves becomes deeply interrelated with the research that they do. And the program that I was part of, I really think is a trauma-informed program because it really works with the leaders and students as a whole. And really allows them to bring their life experience to their research and build healthy practices around being a researcher that enables you to take care of self, to take care of elements of research that may be triggering or re-traumatizing. And for me, it actually enabled my research to really move forward in a very life-giving and healing way, because I ended up researching women clergy who have left active ministry due to psychological abuse by their congregations and denominations. And so in doing this research, it touched me very personally, but it also created a space of community and support with other women who were in a similar situation. And that actually became the research population that I focused my dissertation around. Another element of the personal aspect of completing this dissertation in such, I think, a short amount of time, was that I was very protective of the people that I involved in this world of being a PhD student. I knew that there were people in my personal life, including family, close friends, and colleagues, who were not fully on board or understood really what I was doing or the value it would provide for me in the larger sort of world. There were people that surprised me within the inner circle that were not as supportive as I had thought. And I really thought very carefully about how I wanted to share this work with other people, and became extremely selective about who I engaged with and who I shared with and was vulnerable with as I worked on this work, because it was deeply personal work, and oftentimes it is, again, for researchers who are in the social sciences. So I was very selective in maintaining a very small inner circle of trust with those with whom I would share this work with. Another personal element, I think, I'm a very spiritual person, and I think for me, building ritual around the research itself and the work itself was really helpful. So just doing personal reflection, doing a lot of self-care and aspects of life that helped to bring joy and energy into my life, taking breaks when I needed to, knowing when I had reached my edge and needing to step back from the research and giving myself a break, just being really attentive to what my physical, emotional, and spiritual needs were throughout the process. And lastly, the political. I think for me as a feminist researcher, I really had a strong desire and passion that I brought to this work. And I think, again, that helped push forward my timeline in working through these 3 years. I think there is still, in today's age, a lot of conditioned social behaviors and messages that really try to silence women. And I found that my work, being something that was giving voice to women and centering women's experiences, really was this catalyst for pushing me through. I felt like I really had a sense of calling with this work to be able to bring women's experiences that in this particular area in ordained ministry into the forefront in ways that have been silenced or gaslit or minimized, in ways that have been really abusive and harmful. So I felt a great deal of responsibility, a great deal of passion, and it really empowered me and the people that were involved in my research to have that sense of urgency around the work. And again, that helped really propel me forward on the days when I was really tired or felt like I was really beleaguered. I really always fell back on that sense of purpose. And for the women that I coach, either in academic spaces or outside of academia and leadership spaces, this need to really have a sense of purpose in one's work is really part and parcel of this research that I did. It was giving voice to an experience that I myself had had, also giving voice to the women that participated in my research. And I'm just really excited to see where the research goes from here and the ways that it will touch people. And I'm curious to see as well how this packaging of this work in a PhD degree will further validate and legitimize the experiences of women, women leaders, caregiving leaders, purpose-driven leaders. And so anyone who is interested in learning more about this PhD journey that I was on, or curious yourself as you pursue it or consider pursuing it, I would love to talk with you further and to just to share our experiences and to continue to support one another in a productive way.